Well, to start, since most of the other news is WWE news, I will start with the Impact Wrestling news because former Impact Wrestling World Champion Steve Maclin was supposed to team with Bully Ray against PCO and Scott D'Amore on Saturday, July the 15th at Slammiversary with former NHL player Darren McCarty as the special enforcer. But Steve Maclin is now injured as he suffered a serious injury at the Down Under event, which was Impact Wrestling's event down in Australia this last week. He suffered a serious undisclosed injury and will be replaced from the match or in the match. It's unfortunate. Steve Maclin has been one of the bigger stars in Impact Wrestling over the last couple of months, I should say. And it's unfortunate that he's lost the opportunity to participate in one of Impact Wrestling's biggest pay-per-views of the year, because anytime somebody's missing out on a big pay-per-view event, it's unfortunate. You gotta say it's unfortunate. So I wish nothing but the best to Steve Maclin in his recovery from his undisclosed injury. But now we jump to WWE as we had the trial of the Tribal Chief last night on SmackDown, and it saw another twist in what has been one of the greatest storylines in WWE history of the last decade, or even the last 2 decades, I would say, as Jey Uso was written off early on SmackDown last week after a brutal beatdown from the Tribal Chief and Solo Sikoa, as Jey was made to watch. But after Jimmy went to the hospital, Jey came back, beat down the Tribal Chief, and beat down his brother Solo, and laid down the challenge to Roman Reigns for a match at SummerSlam, one-on-one. No interference, no Jimmy, no Solo, no Paul Heyman, just Roman and Jey. We also saw the possibility of Solo turning on Roman, as Solo picked up the lei, the Tribal Chief lei, and thought about putting it on himself. Maybe I could be the Tribal Chief, thought Solo. And that led to some interesting tension, but the fact of the matter is, the turn has been made, or the challenge has been made, I should say, but it is not official yet. Jey wants Roman one more match at SummerSlam for the undisputed Universal Heavyweight Championship. What will happen at SummerSlam? Well, Roman will win, but at least we'll get to see one more match between Jey and Roman. This time with the fans, and this time for the undisputed Universal Heavyweight Championship. Last time it was just for the Universal title. This time's going to be a little different, and not just because there's people. It's because these two are now a part of one of, if not the greatest storyline WWE has done in a long, long time. And now we've also made a lot of talk this year about the potential main roster call-ups, as Trick Williams was up on the main roster on SmackDown for a tryout match this past week. Trick Williams has, I believe, seen his stock rise. I don't watch NXT, but I'm pretty sure Trick Williams is the second in command for Carmelo Hayes. I think Trick showed potential, but I think Trick needs to branch out on his own before he gets up on the main roster to really show what he can do. Also, a potential match has been brought up for SummerSlam, as Rhea Ripley needs a challenger, and Rhea Ripley needs a challenger that isn't Natalya. Unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, give me a second and I'll explain. Unfortunately, Rhea's challenger seems to potentially be the women's tag team champion, or one half of the women's tag team champions, in Raquel Gonzalez. And the reason why that's unfortunate is because she's one half of the women's tag team champions. I know that maybe the plan was to have Rhea Ripley challenge Raquel and not have Raquel be the tag team champion. But the fact of the matter is, it should be more, what are you going to do with the women's tag team titles, not having the women's tag team champion challenge the women's champion. I understand that maybe things changed because of the hard out date for Ronda Rousey, but to say you don't have a plan again for the women's tag team champions, it makes you wonder why the women's tag team titles are even in existence. And also why they merged with the NXT titles. I understand the NXT women's division needs to be rebuilt, and that they can't be responsible for having the women's tag team titles down in NXT. But the fact of the matter is, NXT did 100 times better with the women's tag team titles than WWE ever did. Than they ever did with the main roster. 100%. NXT did 100% better with the tag titles. Or WWE did 100% better with the tag titles in NXT than they did on the main roster. 100% better. Like, it's alarming how much better they did. Speaking of NXT, though, the Creed brothers recently lost, I believe on July 4th, a tag team match to the Dyad, and the tag team match was Loser Leaves Town, or Loser Leaves NXT, and the Creed brothers surprisingly lost. And the first thought was, that means the Creeds are getting called up. But the reality of the situation is, at this point, there are no plans for the Creeds to get called up to the main roster. And the fact of the matter is, if that is the case, if that's the case, then what does that mean for the Creeds? Well, what that means for the Creed brothers is, they're staying down in NXT and they're going to make it work. Because this is the most that the Dyad has done since the Dyad joined the Schism with Joe Gacy. And I kind of would like to see them branch out and be on their own again, because I think they would be better off being on their own or showing some independence away from the Schism. Either way, I've enjoyed it because you get to see fresh tag teams vying for a shot at momentum. But at the same time, now I'm curious, what are they going to do to keep the Creeds down in NXT? Either way, though, that is it for the news, and I will see you in the next one.